Hello there, and thank you for joining me. I'm Brad Villers. First off, just a quick shout out to those of you who watched part 1 of this series. Wow, a big thank you. It's been received really well, and I've even gotten a number of comments. Sure, it feels great, and apologies to the Joe Rogan Experience for prying eyeballs away from them, but more than anything, the views and comments do their magic on YouTube's algorithm and have clearly helped get it in front of more people, which is what this is all about. Now, as I mentioned in the kickoff to this exploration of Larken Rose's The Most Dangerous Superstition, it's an incredibly thought-provoking book by itself, but one of the things I've been so excited about is that it could serve as, I think, the perfect canvas to explore some related topics, writers, and the like that I've come across. So this will be the first of these, maybe we can call them sideline discussions, and on a subject I think will serve as a solid complement to the main theme from the last video, which is Rose's observation that, despite the significant attention paid to what we typically identify as the sources of authority and resulting suffering, slavery, and injustice in the world, the true underlying causal factor is actually our perception of that ostensible authority. So where organizations like the World Economic Forum, individuals like Hitler, and as Rose suggests, constructs like government certainly have culpability for bad outcomes, they never would or could exist without widespread belief in their legitimacy and willingness to obey their commands. Someone I spoke about when I first started this channel, and in fact I think I shared in my very first video, though they were so cringy back then I couldn't even bring myself to watch it again, is this man, Buckminster Fuller. Apologies if you know of him, but if so, bear with me so I can share some quick biographical information. Mr. Fuller was an American architect, systems theorist, writer, designer, inventor, philosopher, and futurist. He's most well known for popularizing the geodesic dome and specifically its application in housing and commercial buildings, with him ultimately being awarded a patent in 1954. He was also the second world president of Mensa International, which, as you may know, is the largest and oldest high IQ society in the world, which I've heard alternatively described as accepting only applicants who are, quote, wicked smart and, quote, have the smarts real good. And while you can probably conclude from just the brief information I've shared that Fuller made some tremendous contributions, it's what he shared about thinking, his thinking in particular, that at least in my opinion, trumps them all. And rather than have me just talk about it, better to hear directly from the source, with this coming from an interview he gave in 1979. We'll start here with him describing his childhood.
My father died when I was quite young, and my mother would say, darling, never mind what you think, listen, we're trying to teach you. And she sacrificed a great deal to send me to what she felt was a good school. There they said, never mind, young man, what you think, listen, we're trying to teach you. And all my contemporaries were being convinced that that was so, because I knew how much my mother loved me, and I felt my teachers, my friends, and they were all telling me never mind what I thought. I tried very hard to play the game and not pay attention to what I thought.
Now let's skip ahead to where he's discussing some experiences after his attendance at Harvard University and subsequent service in the Navy. Note that by this point, several of his Harvard classmates had financed a business he started constructing those geodesic dome buildings I mentioned, and while he was able to complete around 240 of these structures, it ended up being a financial failure due to sacrifices in quality that he felt would have been necessary for them to make money.
So I said, I think I better do away with myself. Or, if you're going to do away with yourself, you better do some thinking about it. And up to this time, I've always said, never mind, I've been taught, never mind what I think, learn the game. And I said, the game has turned out to be one I can't get on with. And so when I started this, my own thinking, this is 1927, I was 32. That's the point you ask about. Mm-hmm. And it became a very extraordinary matter to suddenly do your own thinking, and realizing how many times what I'd been thinking was happening in the society, which society didn't think was happening, how many times I'd really been right.
Yeah.
And so that gave me some courage to think about doing my own thinking.
And I would highly recommend you watching the full interview, which I'll link in the description. So here we have an obviously exceptionally intelligent man, but conditioned to disregard his own thinking and, despite their best intentions, instead rely solely on what others were teaching him to, quote, play the game, as he describes it, ultimately leading to the crisis that had him contemplating suicide. Another thing I want to mention, and that shows just how seriously he took his newfound idea of doing his own thinking, he goes on to describe how, in order to deprogram the automatic responses, or what he describes as the conditioned reflexes of interpersonal relationships, he set up what he called a moratorium on speech, and with her cooperation, had his wife handle all interactions he would otherwise be needed for over the next 2 years, during which he engaged in virtually no verbal communication. Now that, my friends, is commitment. Buckminster Fuller is widely quoted and referenced on the subject of thinking for yourself, and I wanted to share his story and thoughts to really drive home the fact that we suffer serious consequences from not doing our own thinking. One of those being the acceptance of the legitimacy of authority. In fact, government, the ultimate example of authority highlighted in the book, owes its very existence to millions, if not billions, of people disregarding their own capacity for independent thought and simply following the herd. The sheeple, are they not? I'll definitely be delving much deeper into this, and of course we have the distractions of entertainment and sports and travel and occupations that keep us from doing our own thinking, but I'm convinced there are even more powerful forces at work. And those are the need for acceptance and fear of ostracism. Don't believe me? When politics comes up at the next client dinner, or, hey, Thanksgiving is just around the corner, try dropping this one at the table. You know, voting is just an attempt to legitimize the state's erroneous claim of a monopoly on violence. See what I mean? But here again is the question I posed many times before. How many people have that nagging doubt, that lingering unease with what they know to be systems that are fatally flawed and have no hope for reform because they are fundamentally immoral and fail the most basic of tests of reason and logic, yet it goes unspoken? I think more than we might imagine, but fear is certainly a powerful motivator. Well, let's leave it there. I think this was a worthwhile addition to the conversation, and hope you do too. Come on back as we keep plugging along in Larken Rose's The Most Dangerous Superstition. Be well and see you then, right?